You're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. It's more fun to believe. Third year bonus.
Wow, the music just keeps getting better and better. Alex Stein composed the Me and Paranormal You dots. That's what we call them. We call them the dots. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. This is your buddy Ryan Singer coming to you with another 30-year bonus of Me and Paranormal You. If you're new to the program, this is a solo episode. There will be no, interviewing of a guest, I suppose. That's not to say people won't jump in here. Who knows who's going to jump in? This is a stream of consciousness exercise of paranormal and esoteric and mystical and ridiculous thoughts that enter the consciousness of me, your host, Ryan Singer, longtime stand-up comedian and paranormal researcher, investigator, experiencer. Let's start off with a quote from The Elusive Science, Origins of Experimental Psychical Research, written by Seymour Moskoff and Michael McVaugh. And, you know, there's an afterword written by J.B. Ryan and his wife, L.E. Ryan. Interesting. Anyway, The Elusive Science. Yeah, indeed, right? Still, for telepathy to be successful, the information to be transmitted had to have deep personal and emotional significance. Hence, soul's failures, not soul like your human soul or something like that, but this was an experimenter, a researcher. Soul's failures could be explained in any of a number of ways, all of which came back to this. His careful experimental method was not suited to the phenomena he hoped to observe. So I'd written a note here: emotional connection or significance is a needed aspect for successful telepathy, ? Now, there's something, I suppose, somewhat interesting about the idea that one must be emotionally connected, or in some way there must be some significance for telepathy to be successful. Is telepathy a deeply personal phenomenon? Is parapsychology a very personal science? If that's what we want to call it. There's all kinds of notes in this book that when I was reading this book, I think this is one of the books that I didn't finish all the way. It's a very dense. This is like a textbook you would read if you were taking like Parapsychology 101. Actually, is this from Johns Hopkins, or maybe that's who printed it? Oh yeah, so it's Johns Hopkins as the printer. Anyway, spontaneous generation controversy from Descartes to apparent. Okay, there's other books I want to read now. All of a sudden, the cover image of this is, I don't know. It's okay. I see what that is. Anyway, it's just like a booth. Oh, Marshallville, Ohio. J.B. Ryan lived in Ohio. I actually also have The Enchanted Voyager, which is a biography of J.B. Ryan as well. If you're interested in that kind of thing, in the history of parapsychology and psychical research, I highly recommend diving into that. Let's see here. I wanted to... So the paradigm for experimental work in the field was established by J.B. Ryan's 1934 book, Extrasensory Perception. There was, Joseph Banks Ryan. That's a pretty cool name, Joseph Banks. I don't know why you wouldn't go by that. Organized psychical research can be dated symbolically from a conversation between Harry Sidgwick and his student F.W.H. Myers one moonlit night in Cambridge about 1870 over the need to validate religious belief through the methods of empirical science. The impulse that had moved the founders of psychical research had not lost its power in the intervening half century. Now, Spectre Vision Radio has, their podcast network has a new series with Mitch Horowitz, which is actually diving into, I guess, the origins of a lot of extrasensory perception and things like that. I think it's, what is it called? It's like the first step. What is it? Extraordinary Evidence, I think, is the name of the series. Might forgive me. But okay, I've got a few other things here. I highly recommend it. If you haven't listened to the new episode of Euphomet, oh my God, I texted today. I was like, okay, good news. Here's the good news. Love the return of Euphomet. Incredible episode. Here's the bad news. I'm going to quit podcasting. The episode was so good. So damn good. Well done to Jim Perry and the crew over there for that. As you know, I am currently reading a book called Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman, who also wrote a book about UBI, which is a lot different than a UTI. UBI is Universal Basic Income, things like that. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and dare I say it is uplifting in a time when, my spirits needed uplifted. I don't know about yours. I hope you're doing okay. The journey has begun. I did get caught up and watch all the Despicable Me Pixar movies. And now I'll move on to the Minions. Seems timely. Seems timely. I'll say that. So I do have exciting news. Maybe we'll talk about Humankind a little bit. I've also got The Trickster and the Paranormal out. Maybe we'll do a book draw from there. Now, there is something interesting I think needs to be, needs to be addressed. That's a weird way to say, hey, I want to tell you something that happened to me. That's not how you say that. That's the wrong setup. I have been embarking upon a new meditation program. I'm really enjoying it. I'm trying to, really lean into the out-of-body experience, things like that, right? And trying to get into that. And this is before I'm doing this. My next move will be, I gotta get her back on the program, Desiree, and I think I'm gonna take her hypnosis class. Maybe learn how to do like self-hypnosis, things like that. But I still gotta get attuned in Reiki. There's just too much. There's too many things to do all at once, right? I need to go buy a Powerball ticket tonight, so I'll probably go do that. So, okay, so here we are. I got to tell you about what happened to me the other day. This is within the week. This was actually, this is fresh. This is fresh. So I have, I'm getting back into. Well, I'm embarking upon a new meditation program, right? That's slightly different than what I've done in the past. I am, I still enjoy the new moon, full moon, and, I'm a moon guy. You know that about me. Getting back into sigils, things like that, creation, manifestation, shedding, things like this. Magic. So, I'm at this park, and it's really close to my apartment. And I go there all the time. It's called Kenneth Hahn State Recreation Area. It's this huge park that connects to all these other parks. You can do a hike from there to the beach. It's like a 12-mile hike. I haven't done it yet, but I will do it. And while I was there on Friday afternoon, I experienced something that I haven't experienced in the time frame that I experienced it before. It was very truncated as opposed to drawn out previously. And what I mean by that is there was an almost, in comparison, I suppose, we could even call it an immediate manifestation. And is it a synchronicity? Is it even, I don't want to say less than that, or different? Is it just a coincidence? Or is it a synchronicity? Or is it an actual manifestation? I'm going to tell you about that here in a couple minutes because it looks like we're coming right up on the very first commercial break. But I will tell you this, it's something this wasn't something I was trying to do. Okay. Now, Now, I've had conversations with a friend of mine who is, needless to say, a master manifester, and someone who doesn't even try to manifest things, and things happen, and she experiences this in her life on a somewhat regular basis. And so we were talking on the phone about this, and she was pretty much, oh, here we go, and here we go in a good way. I think for me, I'm excited about the future of manifestation here. So just a reminder, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. We can get all these episodes without commercials. Isn't that a great life to live without capitalism being forced into your ears and your eyeballs? It's just, But nonetheless, we keep the lights on one way or the other, don't we, around here? So we're going to be right back. I'm going to tell you about how I manifested something, and I wasn't even trying. And boom, to me, there is zero doubt that this was an actual manifestation. I'll tell you about that when I get right back. And I'm back. I hope you're back as well. So here's what happened. I'm at Kenneth Hahn State Recreation Center on Friday afternoon, walking around with a friend of mine, and they'd never been there before. So I was like, oh, over here, they've got this big center area. They call it the Bowl. And I was like, oh, there's a Frisbee golf course right over here. It's pretty cool. And they're like, oh, do you play Frisbee golf? And I was like, oh, yeah. I've been playing Frisbee golf since I was like 20 years old, 19 years old, So 25 plus years I've been disking it up, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh, I should have just assumed that you did. And I was like, yeah, it's definitely kind of a hippie. It's kind of a hippie sport, right? Along with hacky sack. I love hacky sack. I used to hacky sack a bunch. I was actually pretty good at it back in the day, back in my original college days at Bowling Green State University. I was pretty good at hacky sack. I could do the things where I'd catch it on the back. I could do all kinds of things. And so this person had never, they're from England. They don't know what hacky sack is. So I'm trying to explain hacky sack, and I realized very quickly, I was like, it's much easier to, it's kind of difficult to explain what hacky sack is, I guess. It's like this little beanbag thing, and you kick it and you can't use your hands. You can use your knees, your feet, your back, or whatever. You just can't, your head, you just can't touch it. And it's just kicking it to yourself over and over. And I was like, it's, and I remember, I'll have to explain it to you more later, I guess. And then I remember thinking, oh man, I wish I had a hacky sack. It would be so much easier to show them what hacky sack is than to explain what hacky sack is. About 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, maybe tops, we're walking down by this other area of the park. It's a huge, sprawling park. It's like, it's almost like a Griffith Park or a Central Park. I mean, it's huge. It's got all kinds of stuff happening in different sections of it, right? There's all these picnic tables, and it's, 4:00 in the afternoon. And the sun's still out, so it's still warm. It's like maybe around 70 degrees. As soon as the sun goes down out here in Los Angeles, you should know that it gets cold. It gets what this lizard over here considers to be quite cold. It'll get into the 50s rather quickly. And, this lizard doesn't like that. Anyway, there's one picnic table that is surrounded and basked. It's being basked in sunlight. So I was like, oh, let's go just sit at that picnic table, because I had some cards in my bag. We were going to play little cards. And so we walk up to the table, and what do you see? This picnic table. It's a stone picnic table. There's no one around. What is there? A hacky sack on top, in the middle, backlit beautifully, as if it was a movie set by the sun. A hacky sack, a seemingly somewhat new hacky sack. This hacky sack is in tip-top shape. It's still crunchy crunch, you know what I mean? If you know anything about hacky sacks, this one is really crunchy. It's not all sag, it hasn't been kicked around a bunch. I can't believe it. I have not seen a hacky sack in 25 years, give or take a few years. It's been decades since I've seen a hacky sack. And I can't remember how long it's even been since I spoke about hacky sack. Probably 10, 15 years since I've even talked about hacky sack. It was a part of me that I almost forgot existed, right? That's how long ago it's been since I last referenced this hippie sport that I love so much. And then there it is, a beautiful hacky sack sitting on top of the picnic table. And they're just like, oh my God, you set this up? I was like, I didn't set this up. This isn't a setup. I had no idea I'd be talking about hacky sack today. You know, that wasn't on my afternoon plan. Like, hey, talk about hacky sack, right? You know, I thought it was just going to be a hike. I mean, that was about a 15-minute manifestation. And that's a physical manifestation of an object. And I have that hacky sack. I have it right here. I'm looking at it. I'm actually holding it right now. Maybe I'll post a photo over on the Patreon page. But that's my first physical, at least that I'm like hyper aware of on the forefront of my mind, physical manifestation. And here's the thing, I didn't try to manifest it, but I did think to myself in a very genuine way for a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A genuine, or, you know, I didn't have any kind of hidden agenda with the motive wasn't selfish. You know what I mean? Do you know what it's, you know, it was a wholehearted wish to like, oh, I just wish I had a hacky sack so I could, you know, show them how, it'd be so much easier to show them what a hacky sack is. And, you know, I thought everyone had heard of it. And sure enough, there's a hacky sack. So maybe because it was an altruistic wish to a certain degree, right? I think maybe that's kind of close. Still not the word I'm looking for, but it's close enough. Since it was an altruistic wish, maybe that's why the hacky sack appeared. So I have not tried on purpose to manifest anything else, because that's probably your next question. Well, what else have you manifested since then? God, I'd love like a free pizza right now. You know what I mean? I would, because I just love pizza all the time. I will eat pizza twice a day. Full disclosure, I did have some pizza today already, and now I'm trying to manifest another pizza. I'm not going to manifest a pizza right now. That would be a waste of a manifest. That's what we call a selfish manifestation. This would be a selfish manifestation. So, any hoodles. Moving on. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I called my friend Carolyn in Florida, who has manifested all kinds of things over the years, and she pretty much said, "Okay, here you go. It has begun." And I don't exactly know what that means on every level. When someone like her tells me it has begun, but sure enough, something has begun. So here we go. And I think it's directly tied with a new, more intense, dedicated, and I've been pretty dedicated to my meditation program and tapping into, you know, trying to manifest and trying to create reality. And in these last few months, especially now that I've got settled back in to my home here in Los Angeles, I do feel like I am manifesting the things I want in my life, or at least let me clear that up. I have a clear idea of the things that I want in my life, right? You know, the manifestation process and the visualization and creating your thoughts create your reality, right? I do believe that, and you know, it's convincing myself that I believe it, and but it's knowing that it's real as opposed to just believing that it's real and then still having some of those blockages. So here it goes, I suppose, is where we're at with all that. So I will be keeping you up to date. I'm going to keep you up to date. I think I'm going to, actually, I have an idea of one of the things that I am definitely going to try to manifest somewhat soon. I might mention that before the end of this program. Let's see if I can remember to do that before I'm finished recording here today. And obviously we'll keep you posted. And by we, I mean Nigel and myself. We'll keep you posted on all of that. I'm manifesting. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. I'm manifesting myself a house. Okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm manifesting myself just a nice, cute, nothing fancy, nothing crazy. I am manifesting myself a house in a location that I love. Those are the only parameters, right? I am manifesting myself in a house in a place that I love, in a place where I thrive, in a place that feeds my creativity and my work and my progress in, melting into the ether at some point. That is what I'm manifesting. And you know what? I got to put up my vision board. I don't have that up right now. So I got to create a vision board. We come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about, the delicious, decent pudding, human pudding, and as we were calling it last week. And and more on that when we get back. Patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month, no commercials. We'll be right back. And I am back. I hope you've joined me. I hope you have joined me on this journey today. Very good. Okay, so I want to just read you a little bit from Humankind, maybe give you a little bit of, I don't know if it'll inspire any hopefulness in you or not, but it doesn't matter what has happened around us. It's always good to get inspired with a little hopefulness, regardless of things. So, this is, what section is this? It's still in part 1. It's about the state of nature. Let's see here. Okay, I don't think I did this part yet. Are we humans, in other words, more inclined to be good or evil? It's a question philosophers have grappled with for hundreds of years. Talks about Thomas Hobbes, the book Leviathan, which actually I have that book somewhere. I bought it because someone's reading it in a TV show or a movie or something. And when they do that in a movie or TV show, where one of the main characters has a book and they're like, oh, you want me to see what this book is? And, oh God, I wish I could remember. I feel like it was Bosch, but it's not Bosch. And the character was reading Leviathan. And I'd never heard of Leviathan. I never studied philosophy. I thought about going into philosophy for like a master's degree. And I actually at one point joined a philosophy class during my undergrad years. And I ended up dropping the class after one class because I realized it was going to load me up on way too much reading and I had too much other stuff. I was already kind of had a busy, crowded class schedule at that point. So I dropped it. But Leviathan is written by Thomas Hobbes, and who pretty much, we call it Hobbesian, I suppose. This whole outlook that, it's the, what is it? The veneer effect, or the veneer theory is what I wasn't saying last week. So it's the veneer theory that human beings are at our core, where these rotten, cannibalistic, warlike creatures that are very barely removed from our bloodthirsty, chewing the meat off of each other's bones phase, and that has been embraced and propagated and taught and told and believed and embedded into the minds, hearts, and souls of everyone on the planet, pretty much, when in fact it's quite the opposite. And so, we're not going to, we kind of talked about that, and I think I gave you some examples that are listed in this book, but there's a couple things in here that are just so... one of the interesting things, too, is all these studies about soldiers, and I think you've probably heard this. Soldiers, I think it's, roughly 15% of soldiers at war will actually fire their weapons. What this tells us is something very profound. People don't want to kill people. We are averse to killing each other, even when we're, quote-unquote enemies. You hear all this talk about... And there's a lot of rhetoric, right? You hear all this talk, political rhetoric about the civil war that's coming, that's upon us, that's getting ready to happen. And you know, a lot of it comes from the right, and, you know, they seem to do more threatening than the left, the liberals, you know, socialists, right? We tend to be a little more peaceable. Like, for example, there was caravans of Trumpers driving through Los Angeles, through West Hollywood, which is a famously gay area of Los Angeles, and screaming things and yelling things at you know, homophobic things out the windows. This same caravan drove through, you know, predominantly and well-known you know, Latino Mexican neighborhoods, doing the same thing, yelling, you know, racial slurs and things like that, to the effect of, you know, get ready to get out of here kind of stuff. And you didn't, you know, you just, it's disheartening when those things happen. And it would be easy to be like, oh, we just need to, good thing I wasn't out there. You know, one of those situations, right? Like, I mean, if I had a bunch of eggs just in my pocket when that caravan was driving by, yelling things like that at people, would those eggs remain in my pocket? I don't know. I'd rather eat an egg than throw it. I do know that. And chickens are adorable in their own way. But anyway, so it's easy to get caught up, right, in the emotionality of it. And especially when we are launching from a foundation of believing that everybody's just a piece of shit, and we really have to have civilization, education, and even therapy to make sure we transcend our dark human nature. When in fact, it's quite the opposite. There's some interesting stats here and numbers that he lists. Let's see if I should have had that already. You know, what do you know? Nigel didn't really help me out here. Oh yeah, and like there's, you know, there's all these studies, right, and books that were written over the years of people who kind of sided with Hobbes, the Hobbes, you know, propelling and propagating the Hobbesian theory that we're all just kind of, you know, evil, you know, the veneer theory, and when in fact it's not even close to being accurate. And when you examine, as Bregman did, the sources of these writers' information, these anthropologists, that they're flawed, and in fact, seemingly with not that much work. Now, I'm not trying to discredit the research that Bregman did and all these kinds of things, but it didn't seem like it was that hard for him to go back and find out, oh, this is completely flawed and non-scientific. And this was just, because this book written by this guy Pinker was 802 pages, everyone just said, well, the argument has been settled. Human beings are animals, right? And we have war mentalities, and it's all against all, right, all the time, right? And when in fact it's not that way at all. One of the interesting things I've never thought of, and is pointed out here, Bregman writes, because he's talking about hunter-gatherers and how hunter-gatherers are the perfect example of how civilization has created something very specific in human beings. And what it has created, in fact, is war and death. And hunter-gatherers, in fact, had very little of that at all. And so when we decided to stop moving and grooving, we stopped moving and grooving, we settled in and sharpened our skin. I mean, that's what it sounds like, right? And that's the argument that's being laid out here. And as someone who loves to be on the float, someone who loves to be on the move, and someone who's I've never even been in a fist fight in my entire life. Am I saying that's because I'm a hunter-gatherer at heart? Well, most certainly, I think we all are, because we all came from that. And You know, having a garden does sound nice. I'm not going to lie to you. But always being on the move, moving and shaking, all that kind of stuff, that also is very appealing to me and has been for quite some time. There's also studies about how, one of the false things that was propagated was like the people who were, most successful at killing had more wives and children, as if it was rewarded, when in fact, Bregman goes back and realizes that study is examining men who were older by 10 years than other men. And so, from 35 to 25, when back then people weren't living to be 80 years old, right? So back then that 10-year gap is a huge difference. And of course, 35-year-old men have more children than 25-year-old men back then, because they've been alive for 10 more years. And that's a lot more of the bunch of wow, bow, wow. I don't even know how to make that porn music anymore. A lot more knocking boots, I suppose you could say it that way. Okay, I rambled on a little longer. I didn't even get to like some of the stuff I want to get to, so we're gonna do that right when we get back. We got another commercial. We're keeping the lights on over here. And by the way, you can be a free patron. You don't have to pay for it. You can be over there. I give stuff away for free over there. Sometimes episodes without commercials. Be a free patron. We've got a good number of people over there right now. I'd love to see it even double. We're going to manifest that. We're going to go from 120. I think we're at 120 now. Let's go to 240. Let's hit 240 by 2025. Let's do it. We'll be right back. Got to keep on moving. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep moving. You got to keep grooving. Here's another thing that anthropologists long assumed, that prehistoric social networks were small, that we wandered through the jungle in bands of 30 or 40 relatives, they thought. Any encounters with other groups swiftly devolved into war. That is what was believed. But in 2011, a team of American anthropologists mapped out our social networks of 32 primitive societies around the world, from the Nunavut in Alaska to the Veda in Sri Lanka. Turns out the nomads are extremely social. They're constantly getting together to eat, party, sing, and marry people from other groups. True, they do their foraging in small teams of 30 to 40 individuals, but those groups consist mainly of friends, not family, and they're also continually swapping members. As a consequence, foragers have vast social networks. In the case of the Achi in Paraguay and the Hadza in Tanzania, a 2014 study calculated that the average tribe member meets as many as 1,000 people during his or her lifetime. In short, there's every reason to think that the average prehistoric human had a large circle of friends. Continually meeting new people meant continually learning new things. And only then could we grow smarter than the Neanderthals, because there is also this theory that we killed off the Neanderthals, when in fact we outlived them because we were so social. And there is some theory, and it kind of lays out here too, that that the Neanderthals had a larger brain than us, which meant that they were smarter. So everyone thinks Neanderthal, they think it's like an insult, when in fact the Neanderthal had a larger brain and had more capacity for doing things that brains do because of that. And we weren't as smart as the Neanderthal because of a smaller brain, yet we were so social and able to mimic because of that we were able to learn all kinds of things very quickly because of how social we were. And the Neanderthals were not nearly as social as Homo sapiens. Interesting stuff, right? So, okay, this is interesting. There is another way to resolve the question about early man's aggressive nature. By digging, archaeological evidence may offer the best hope of settling the debate between Hobbes and Rousseau. Rousseau's the person who thinks that humans are decent. the decent, delicious human pudding inside all of us. He's the chef. Because the fossil record can't be, quote, contaminated by researchers the way tribes can. We're talking about anthropologists getting in there. There's one anthropologist, this is an interesting story that Bregman lays out, where he's saying how vicious they were. And but his gifts to them for letting him observe them were machetes and axes. And they actually invented a word. They invented a word after he left, and the word was like a non-human who was violent and not to be trusted or something. I have to find that because they created a word after he left. Was it Douglas Fry? Was that the guy? No. Douglas Fry was actually debunking Pinker because Douglas Fry was skeptical of this warlike thing, right? This narrative that was being laid up. And Pinker had talked about all the war mortality between these tribes that he had observed. And when in fact, Douglas Fry went in and reviewed the original sources of Pinker. And Pinker was the guy who wrote, Fierce... The Better Angels of Our Nature was the book that Pinker wrote. And he calculated that in primitive societies, homicide rate was 14%. That's what he was saying, which is very high, right? And so Fry went back and reviewed Pinker's sources and be like, why does he think 14%? Let's look at these sources that he's making his claims. And so he went back and looked specifically at the Ache, the war mortality, actually concerned a tribe member listed as, quote, shot by a Paraguayan. Now, thinking that this was war between them and the Paraguayans. The Ache were not killing each other, but being relentlessly pursued by slave traders and attacked by Paraguayan frontiersmen, reads the original source. Whereas they themselves, quote, desire a peaceful relationship with their more powerful neighbors, end quote. It was the same with the Hiwi. All the men, women, and children enumerated by Pinker as war deaths were murdered in 1968 by local cattle ranchers. So there, out the window goes the ironclad homicide rates that Pinker was listing in his seminal work of humans are garbage, that went on to define anthropological thought and influence society and the views of humans on ourselves for many, many, many years. So what can we learn then from modern anthropology, Bregman asks? What happens if we examine a society that has no settlements, no farming, and no horses? A society that can serve as a model for how we actually did once live. You guessed it. When we study these types of societies, we find that war is a rarity. Based on a list of representative tribes compiled for the journal Science in 2013, Douglas Fry concludes that nomadic hunter-gatherers avoid violence. Nomads would rather talk out their conflicts or just move on to the next valley. This sounds a lot like the boys on that island, on Atta, that island where those 6 or 7 boys were stranded for 15 months. And another thing, Bregman writes, anthropologists long assumed that prehistoric social networks were small, and we talked about that they're actually large. 1,000 people. I know people in my hometown where I grew up, and just other places as well, who I don't know if they'll meet 1,000 people in their lifetime. Maybe they will. I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating. And we're not talking about through the internet. We're talking about actually meeting them. And this is an interesting part that I had never considered. And when I read it, I was like, oh, light bulbs, right? Beautifully colored, peaceably colored light bulbs went off in my mind. Fortunately for us, there's an important exception when it comes to, because hunter-gatherers traveled light. So there's not a ton of information to be gathered from, there's no settlements, right? To like dig up and be like, this was their library or something, you know what I mean? There's an important exception, though, to that. Cave paintings. If our state of nature was a, quote, war of all against all, a la Hobbes, then you'd expect that someone at some point in this period would have painted a picture of it. But that's never been found. While there are thousands of cave paintings from this time about hunting bison, horses, and gazelles, there's not a single depiction of war. So what about the ancient skeletons? Pinker cites 21 excavations having an average murder rate of 15%. But as before, Pinker's list here is a bit of a mess. 20 of the 21 digs date from a time after the invention of farming, the domestication of horses, or the rise of settlements, making them altogether too recent, meaning they don't apply. So how much archaeological evidence is there for early warfare before the days of farming, riding horses, and living in settled societies? How much proof is there that war is in our nature? The answer, Bregman argues, is almost none. Scientists who have studied archaeological dig sites, some 3,000 Homo sapiens skeletons unearthed at 400 different sites, old enough to tell us something about our, quote, natural state. You know what they found? Scientists see no convincing evidence for prehistoric warfare. Zilch. We're going to be right back, and we're going to get deeper into our loving nature and our delicious, decent pudding. I mean, are you feeling how delicious and decent your pudding is after some of this? And this is not even the tip of the iceberg here, right? I mean, this book is a behemoth. It's nearly 400 pages, and I haven't even, in the things I'm referencing here so far, last week and this week in the Mindcast, they haven't even covered the first. We haven't even gotten through past page 100 yet. Okay, so what other delicious, decent human pudding details? What other delicious, decent details of the human pudding will we find? I can only imagine, right? It's uplifting to my spirit to understand that, and not that I'm seeking out information to confirm confirmation bias, but capitalism is evil. Capitalism is evil. There's too many people on the planet to be hunter-gatherers at this point. I suppose you could argue at least that we have decided to be settled in these cities. Well, I mean, there's 11 million people in Los Angeles, and I'm one of them. And, so who's ready to party? You know what I mean? There's 11 million of us. I got to be able to find somebody to party with tonight. And by party, I mean drink some pumpkin eggnog. I got some pumpkin eggnog, and I got to tell you, I drank way too much of it last night, and I paid for it today. I was paying the pumpkin nog piper today, and I'm not going to do it again tonight. I'm working on Shapeshifter, the memoir or the book or whatever. After I'm done with this, I'll be working on that tonight. Also, I got some shows. I'll be in Echo Park at the Fable on Wednesday night. The 13th, November 13th, if you're in the east side of Los Angeles. And then Saturday night, I'll be at the West Side Comedy Theater, 10 o'clock, if you're on the west side. And then I'll be in like the Long Beach, El Segundo, or not the Long Beach, El Segundo, South Bay area on the 19th. Anyway, doing a show. But I'm going to do a random book draw here. Trickster and the Paranormal. Let's see how this ties in. Oh. There was something already there. I opened up to J.B. Rhine and his legacy. We already talked about that. Oh, geez. Serious scientific investigation of psychic phenomena has been ongoing since 1882 with the founding of the Society for the Psychical Research in England. But it wasn't until the work of J.B. Rhine at Duke University in the early 1930s that a systematic laboratory approach was effectively institutionalized. We just reinforced that from earlier. We're going into a different page here. Again, George P. Hansen, the seminal work, The Trickster and the Paranormal. I'm just going to read the summary here of the page I've opened up to. Paranormal phenomena associated with unbounded conditions inherently lack clear limits, constraints, and boundaries, and hence they are particularly hospitable to the trickster. They display an extraordinary richness of surreal qualities. They blend fantasy and reality. They are almost universally ignored by those in the establishment. The task of studying unbounded paranormal phenomena falls to a small number of independent researchers. Maybe you're one of them. Another symptom of the phenomena's anti-structural nature. Do you understand how this ties in right now? God, I can't wait to dig into this. These phenomena intrude into the lives of investigators. Oh boy, here we go. The researchers participate in them and cannot remain on the side as observers. The subject-object distinction is subverted, and the consequences are often unpleasant. Status is an important concept here. The phenomena induce marginality in those that become enmeshed in them. Researchers who seriously study the phenomena are tainted and suffer a loss of prestige. Further, trying to describe the phenomena with the most obvious frameworks, i.e., religious beliefs and conspiracy theories, tend to make one appear odd. The phenomena are almost incomprehensible to the modern rationalistic mind, but people in earlier cultures understood them. The primitives grasped the idea of, quote, participation and the contagion of taboo violation. Infectious agent phenomena, remember that? Contagion. These concepts illuminate unbounded paranormal phenomena far better than scientific theories accepted today. And right before that, there's a section on John Keel and the Mothman. And then there's Ralph Steiner. Unbounded conditions. Let's just say Bigfoot sightings, cattle mutilations, and UFO flaps are some of the largest paranormal manifestations. With them, no clearly defined group of people is involved, but rather participation is unbounded. Any number of people can be witnesses. The phenomena occur over indefinite areas and for indeterminate periods of time. These are often exotic and confusing, and the conditions surrounding them are ill-defined and unstructured. Examples of more structured occurrences include seances held in pre-designated rooms with known participants, ritual magic ceremonies that cast magic circles of protection with specified procedures, various cultures' rituals to propitiate spirits of the dead, and parapsychology's laboratory methods to constrain and designate the phenomena to be observed. In these examples, the participants are known to each other. The locations and times of activities are clearly demarcated, and the beliefs, expectations, and paradigms are understood. So I think Hansen's pretty clear about that, right? He lays out what bounded versus unbounded is. Now, what is interesting is anti-structural, right? So, was the trickster, here we go here. I know the music's going to come in here any second, but hunter-gatherers, I would argue, when we were doing the hunter-gatherer situation, when we had to keep on moving and grooving, we had less, quote-unquote, structure. And therefore, we were more predisposed to the natural, spiritual, and idealistic belief systems. Robert Sapolsky, I think that's the guy's name. My buddy Renee sent me his videos of, and he's actually referenced in Humankind when I was reading last night. Anyways, there's so much. This is so dense, and there's so many connections. And when we come back, we're going to extrapolate that on. We're going to, get into that a little bit more. I don't even have my words, man. Who needs structured words? Who needs language and rules and grammar and syntax, man? Hey, man, you sound like me, man. Okay, Todd, I did kind of co-opt your style there. We're going to be right back. This is the last break. So giddy up, giddy up, giddy up. We're going to be coming right back. And we're back. We're hitting the home stretch here. I got to tell you, I'm excited about this because the anti-structural nature of, in which the trickster thrives seems to me to be a perfect marriage with the hunter-gatherer history of Homo sapiens and our ancient ancestors. And civilization seems to be very structured, right? You go to the same place for food. You go to the same place for law. You go to the same place for education. Blah, 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 blah. The same place to sleep every night in your bed, blah, 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 blah. You feel anchored. You set your roots in, and maybe I'm not supposed to have these roots, right? And maybe I'm supposed to be rooted in the very nature of journey. And that is exciting. I'm over here trying to, at the beginning of this episode, I'm telling you I'm manifesting a super cute house somewhere in a place in which I thrive. So the question is, do I still want to do that 45 minutes later? Well, I suppose the answer might be yes. Doesn't mean I have to be there, and doesn't mean other people can't be there when I'm not there, or be there even when I am there. I don't know about living alone. I'm a middle-aged guy. I've got housemates. I'm not embarrassed by that. I'm not ashamed by that. We live in a culture that will shame us for not having excess. And, if you don't have more than you need, you're not successful. I don't know what kind of mental illness that is, other than capitalism, I suppose. I don't know how else to say that. That is a mental illness, to feel less than because you don't have more than. That is a delusional view of the world. Hunter-gatherers were the epitome of need it, have it, don't need it, don't take it. I mean, this is a very limited, and now granted, I'm not an anthropological, PhD or something like that, right? But if you're always moving, if you are, the Harfoots, if you're the hobbits, right, before they get to the Shire, always moving, right, in seemingly operating in a perfect union with nature around you, it seems to speak to more of a liminal nature of living, which would open one up to spiritually. I mean, through our mind, I think we are mirrors of ourselves, right? So how we physically live, we spiritually think, and vice versa. And I think language is a great example of that. Depending on what language you're raised in and believe in, it shapes the form of your thoughts. How do you think? What are the methods of thinking with the English language? They're very specific. And that's why I love the movie Arrival so much, because it really gets into that. It's one of the key themes of that movie, in my opinion, is your language forms your thoughts, and your thoughts form your world, right? So what structure, what system are you operating within? So hunter-gatherers had more liminality in their life physically, and more variety in their life geographically. Therefore, I think it stands to reason that liminality, that change, that variety leaves more space for spiritual ruminations. And as been proven by anthropologists, less warfare. What is that correlation, right? Maybe the more spiritual we are, the less institutionalized we are in that spirituality, the more or the less violent we are as a species about same and other. I don't know. The more people you meet, the more empathy you have. It seems to me, right? No, this isn't an exact science, what I'm spitting out over here. So when it comes to understanding paranormal beliefs, it's no accident that the further away we have gotten from our hunter-gatherer ancestors, the less mystical, spiritual, paranormal phenomena we believe in. And it's more difficult for people to even think about believing in it because we're so far removed in our very short history as animals from our origins that we've essentially had our memory erased. It's there. You just have to get back to it. Not you specifically. I mean, we have to get back to it. And how do we do that in a situation where there's billions of people on the planet? And obviously, the way things are set up currently, everyone just can't be a hunter-gatherer right now. There certainly is a way to do it, I'm sure. I just haven't been able to think of it in this moment right now as this stream of consciousness has been happening. Like I said at the very beginning of this episode, these are stream of consciousness episodes for the most part. I have very little notes written down when I go into these, typically. Some might say you're not very prepared. I'm not going to argue that. Nonetheless, here we are. At the end of another hour, I feel like we got to the bottom of it, didn't we? The anti-structural nature of the hunter-gatherer societies leads me to believe that they had a more fulfilling, mystical, paranormal, spiritual life. And they had more space and more room in which they allowed for the unbelievable to be believable. When we transition to society and quote-unquote civilized society and civilizations with all of this structure, the paranormal in the trickster gets squeezed out, therefore has to manifest itself in maybe different ways, maybe more extreme ways from time to time. Now, the collective unconscious, or at least the subconscious, hasn't forgotten about all of this reality of life, that there is phenomena that can't be pinned down and can't be understood. And guess what? That's okay. We don't need to understand it, right? I don't understand why peanut butter is so good. I don't understand how it's made. You mash peanuts together or something. I don't need to understand it to embrace it and to have it be a large part of my life, because peanut butter is a very big part of my life. I don't know how Reese's cups are made. How did they get the peanut butter inside the chocolate? How does the chocolate not melt? How does the chocolate stick like that? How does the peanut butter and chocolate come together in perfect union? Why does it work? I don't give a hoot how it works. I just know that I need it in my life. Okay? I don't understand how it is, but I don't need to. There are other people who do. I rely on them. I can't know everything, right? So it seems to me, once we understand that our ancestors were in fact not who we think they were, these bloodthirsty, warlike, cannibalistic monsters who needed God to tame them. Once we understand that we have become what we feared we were originally, we have become because of these things, these civilized settlements and societies. That's a wake-up call. That's an awakening, I think. How many hippies do you know that are always just traveling the road? I've got some friends who do this. Just living out of vans or going wherever. How many of them are violent? Now, I can't speak to their individual characters necessarily. All these people I don't know. But guess what? They're just wanting to hang out. Eat what they need. Maybe smoke some green. Maybe play some hacky sack. And guess what? I've got a hacky sack now. So we're going to manifest a cute house somewhere where me and other like-minded individuals will thrive in creative pursuits. But you can't stay there permanently. You got to be a hunter-gatherer for knowledge and for information and for mysteries of the universe. That'll be one of the rules of this, whatever this thing I'm manifesting is. Okay, well, and that'll do it for today. So get out your syllabus and we'll look at Next week's episode, we're going to talk about apple pie and its importance in the history of toppling monarchs. There is a story. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm making that up. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. I love you. I hope you love yourself. Reach out to a friend if you're feeling down. If you're feeling really, really at the end, if you're feeling like you can't take it anymore, please reach out to someone. We all need help. We all need each other. We all need each other. Let's not forget that. We are very sociable creatures. Even if we feel antisocial, it will make us feel better. Get outside, put your bare feet in the grass, in the dirt. I've been doing that. It's helpful. Anyway, until next time, I got some good interviews coming up. I'll be excited to share those with you. I am excited to be sharing those with you. I don't have to wait for that excitement. It's already here. And check out the new season of Euphemet. Golly gee. Daniel Noah, friend of the show, buddy, he's on there with Elijah Wood. It's a great episode. They're at the Queen Mary. It's a fascinating, really, really rad episode. As all of them are, of course. Jim Perry, Chef's Kiss. Okay, until next time, I guess I'll see you at a show in Los Angeles. And if I don't see you at a comedy show in Los Angeles, I suppose I'll just have to see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.